Hey guys, Comics Kid 2099 here. It's been a little while since I did a non-review video on this channel, but recently this topic kinda sorta took over my brain, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit. About 6 months ago, I did a few videos talking about some of my favorite fanon theories, fanon being fan canon, and these theories were specifically about comic books and television. This video is kinda sort of gonna be along those same lines, except instead of trying to quickly cover 5 theories in one video, I'm just gonna be covering one theory, and I can talk about it as long as I want. So the topic at hand concerns the X-Men adversary Apocalypse. In Sabanur, the ancient mutant who sees himself as a sort of leader for mutants and has come somewhat close to bringing the X-Men to their collective knees at least once or twice. Apocalypse first appeared in X-Factor issue 5, and not too long after that, we found out that he had celestial technology. Specifically, his spaceship that X-Factor eventually used as their headquarters, and his armor which augmented his powers. For years, it was just assumed that Apocalypse simply found some celestial technology and was using it for his own purposes. In the 1996 Rise of Apocalypse miniseries, we even see Apocalypse's surrogate father showing him the celestial technology. So there was really no reason to believe that there was anything hidden or secretive about how Apocalypse got a hold of this technology. And then we flash forward to 2006, at the end of Peter Milligan's run on X-Men. Apocalypse is floating in space, ready to die, because he doesn't want to honor the agreement that he made with the Celestials. This is the first and last time that we see anything about this, as the next time that we see adult Apocalypse is in a possible future in the Messiah War crossover, and he's back on Earth in weakened form with no reference to his encounter with the Celestials. And since then, Apocalypse was, spoiler for Uncanny X-Force by Rick Remender, reborn as a little kid, and then killed, and then cloned, and now the clone attends the Jean Grey Academy. So it's looking more and more likely that we are never going to know the real deal behind Apocalypse and the Celestials, but I think I have an idea. And it even ties in with my theory that Apocalypse was the big mastermind behind the Weapon X program that gave adamantium to Wolverine. One thing I never took into account when I was presenting my theory that Apocalypse masterminded the entire Weapon Plus program was the very basic question, just where did Apocalypse get the know-how to manipulate adamantium like we know he is capable of doing? When I was presenting my theory that Apocalypse was the mastermind behind the Weapon X program, it didn't really occur to me to ask this question, just because I was so caught up in the fact that all of the evidence was seemingly supporting my theory. But the thing is, Apocalypse is not really a smart character. He's a warrior, he's very tenacious, resilient, and even goal-oriented, but he's not a scientist or has a scientific mind by any stretch of the imagination. So if he has the capacity to bend adamantium to his will, like we know that he does, then it stands to reason that someone or something gave him that knowledge. And who else could have had the chance to do this than the Celestials themselves? And this is what brings us to the real question at hand. Why would the Celestials make a deal with Apocalypse? For anyone who doesn't know what the Celestials are, if you've been watching the most recent superhero movies, you briefly saw a Celestial cameo in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. The Celestials, their thing has always been judging whether a planet lives or dies. I don't know all of their backstory and what they do, but apparently they've been to Earth at least 3 or 4 times in the past, and the next time they plan on coming to Earth, they are going to decide the planet's fate. This would imply that the Celestials need to be impartial. They wouldn't have any reason to have their own agent on Earth trying to save the planet or plunge it further into darkness. And yet we know that Apocalypse had some deal with the Celestials. Or maybe he didn't have a deal with the Celestials plural, but just one of them. We know from the Eternal series by the Knopfs that followed the Gaiman miniseries that the Celestials are not always on the same page. At some point in the past, one of the Celestials did not want to destroy a particular planet, and all of the others very much did. He rebelled, and they put him to sleep under LA, where he stayed for a very long time. So what if Apocalypse isn't in collusion with all of the Celestials, but just one of them? Here's how the timeline of events almost certainly went. In Rise of Apocalypse, his surrogate father shows him the celestial technology. He raises a little bit of Cain in Egypt, then he leaves, taking the tech with him. He does some stuff like repelling a Brood invasion with the help of S.H.I.E.L.D., as we saw in the Architects of Forever storyline from Jonathan Hickman. At some point around this time, Apocalypse gets a message from one of the Celestials. I don't know which one, but one of them is telling him that, listen, your planet is in danger. I'm part of a group of extremely powerful aliens, and most of my friends are really eager to destroy your planet, unless you can provide a really good reason why they should not. And this is where Apocalypse gets the knowledge to manipulate adamantium, as well as any other piece of really advanced knowledge. As I said in my video where I talked about my theory on Apocalypse masterminding the Weapon X program, doing something like this is very much in line with his motives. Apocalypse has always been about survival of the fittest, and this is what has always made him a villain toward the X-Men. But what if Apocalypse got his mission from one of the Celestials to weed out the weak, so that when the Celestials come back to Earth, they will see only the strong, who Apocalypse has spent centuries separating from the chaff, and they will be much more inclined to not destroy the planet. And hey, this lines up pretty naturally with Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force run. In that series, Warren Worthington, formerly a Horseman of Apocalypse, basically has deep ingrained programming that turns him into the next Apocalypse whenever Insabunur is no longer around to complete his mission. And Archangel goes about destroying a good portion of Montana, and then he super evolves the area that he destroyed at an increased rate. He does this to make the planet less weak. They even mention the Celestials in the Uncanny X-Force run. He is preparing the planet for when they come so that they won't get annihilated. So then this begs one more question. What were the terms of the deal that Apocalypse made with one of the Celestials? What was going to happen to him if he failed? And I think we can all agree that he did fail. Over the course of several thousand years, all Apocalypse ever did was take 4 mutants at a time and turn them into his horsemen. And meanwhile, you have Warren Worthington, who was Apocalypse for about 5 minutes, and he got further in his reign as Apocalypse than Apocalypse ever did as Apocalypse. So I submit to you another scenario. The Celestial maybe made a promise to Apocalypse. If you can prevent my friends from destroying your planet, then you can rule over this entire planet. You would think that, hey, your planet is in danger would be enough to motivate Apocalypse, but by this point in his life, any and all innocence and kindness that he had was long ago crushed by Nefri's rejection of him when he was still a slave in Egypt. So telling him that he can rule the planet if he prepares the way for these Celestials, imagine it as kind of like telling a kid that if they clean their room, they can have ice cream. And they have the added bonus of getting to live in a cleaner room. Apocalypse not only gets the planet as a consolation prize, but he also gets to reap the benefits of his centuries-long mission of getting rid of the weak, and thus the entire planet is much better off because of his efforts. But Apocalypse obviously didn't succeed, and I think there's a few reasons for this. One, he was pretty much devastated by a series of really bad circumstances, as seen in the Rise of Apocalypse miniseries. And even though that story cemented his transformation into a supervillain, there's no reason that the people being really judgmental and racist toward him would stop as soon as he had declared that he had had enough. I imagine that over the years, Apocalypse became even more unhinged as he continued to suffer at the hands of a world that wasn't ready for mutants and had no idea what he even was. This, combined with his perpetual use of the Celestial technology to put himself into suspended animation for long periods of time. You know how Ra's al Ghul keeps using the Lazarus Pits, and at least in some stories, that has slowly turned his mind against him? I'm thinking the Celestial sleeping pods that Apocalypse uses, they have a similar effect on him. So eventually, when you combine his growing resentment of humanity and his overuse of the Celestial technology, he's kinda lost sight of his goals as given to him by one of the Celestials. He still has conquest in mind, but he no longer is working toward the goal of preparing the planet for the coming of the Celestials. That explains why he hasn't really accomplished anything at all in a couple thousand years that he's been around. And so, when he thinks he is on the verge of death, floating in outer space, finally free of the deal that he royally screwed up, the Celestial is somehow able to contact him. No, 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 my son, you're not getting off that easily. This is where things get really fuzzy, since we don't really know what happened to that Apocalypse. We know that Clan Akaba resurrected a new Apocalypse who the X-Force team then killed, but was that because Apocalypse 1.0 was dead, or just so far away from Earth that his followers thought that he was as good as dead, and they should just cut their losses and try again with a new make and model? And if he is still alive, what did the Celestial do to him? How would a Celestial keep his bargain with one of the Earthlings a secret? That is, if it was just one Celestial instead of the whole group. I'm thinking it was just one, but there's nothing to say that it couldn't have been all of them. And how does this all fit in with the Messiah War crossover from 2009? All we know is that Apocalypse was so weak that he could not even move. We also know that that story took place at least 1,000 years in the future, and the planet was pretty much a giant shriveled up prune. So maybe the Celestial or Celestials thought that since Apocalypse failed in his given mission to save the planet, a fitting punishment would be to strand him on Earth after it was way too late to save it. This seems a little petty for the Celestials, who have never really demonstrated that much petty humanity in their actions. But again, I know so little about the Celestials, and really, even the people who know more than I do about them, they don't know all that much either. The Celestials are a mystery, and their deal with Apocalypse is a mystery. And as I said, I think it's a safe bet that that deal will remain a mystery forever. But if you can't have specific confirmation about what happened in the comics, then at least you have my theory. But what's your theory about Apocalypse and the Celestials? Do you agree with my theory? Do you think that I'm insane? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you did like this video, let me know in the comments that you really like this kind of video, and in the future I'll try and do more theory type videos as they come to me. In the meantime, if you like this video, be sure to keep an eye out on this channel for other videos in the future, mostly reviews and stuff like that. In the meantime, I hope that you guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll catch you later. Have a good one.